I've had the privilege and the honor of being friends with Bryan Finster for many years now. And through the years, I've had amazing conversations about CI/CD, platform, DORA metrics. Bryan is an innovative technologist. He's a great leader and community builder, and he's a brilliant author. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage my friend, Bryan Finster.
Hey everybody. So I'm thinking I'm not the only one that this topic is top of mind on. You know, AI is taking our jobs. But again, I'm Bryan Finster. I'm a distinguished engineer. I used to be working for a company until Monday. We'll talk about that later. I'm one of the co-authors of minimumcd.org, where we're trying to help people get started on a journey with how to do it safely and correctly instead of just kind of YOLOing code into production. And if you're going through SAFE, I have the cure for you, the Scaled Agile DevOps Maturity Framework, so you too can be a SAD MF. So let's talk about our AI issues. If anyone's been paying attention at all, we've seen this, right? You've got people talking about, hey, I had all my code and the replit deleted it all, or my production database got wiped out and I didn't even ask it to, and then it lied to me. We got large unexpected changes and hallucinations, and you can see studies out there that say, oh, AI just reduces productivity. So our jobs are safe. Any questions? Here's my personal journey with this, because I was incredibly skeptical of this garbage, okay? Spring 2023, I keep hearing people talk about, oh yeah, we're gonna be using AI to write code and write tests, and so I run some experiments with ChatGPT. And I get dependencies that don't exist, just code that's complete garbage. And I used it for like regex, because who here likes regex? No, I don't, yeah. I can't read regex, so I use it for regex. And it was kind of good for that, although it made a lot of mistakes. I said, this is complete BS, you'll never use it for this. And then, come winter of 2023, I start seeing people talking about, oh, we're gonna use it to backfill unit tests. Now, if you know anything about me, how I feel about continuous delivery, and how continuous delivery works, backfilling unit tests are what you do when you're meeting a manager metric and not trying to actually have quality. And so I'm like, we've got to just stomp on this nonsense. So I write quite a bit about these topics. So I started a blog post to demonstrate what garbage you were gonna get if you tried to do that. And I took an open source project I was familiar with that had some untested code in it. I put the code into either ChatGPT or Claude, I forget now. And I got tests that didn't suck, which surprised me because I've seen a lot of tools out there try to backfill tests from code, and it was awful. You just never want to use it. But the test didn't suck. I said, that's interesting. But more irritatingly, I had to throw my blog post away because I couldn't get the data I needed to demonstrate what garbage it was. Come next January, and I go to Gen AI for a DevOps hackathon that John Willis and Patrick Dubois were hosting, where you had all these people coming in trying to think about different problems to solve. Now, at the time, my company had been spinning up an AI team for AI for detached environments, and I'd been kind of talking to those guys. And I thought about, well, one good use case for this, and I know what you probably do, is expose internal policy, right? If you've got all these people writing policies, and the only thing that happens is that you violate one you didn't know about and get fired. So how do we expose those policies? So I went in there to try to hack that, create a simple RAG. I was going to dump minimumcd.org information into that and then start asking it questions. Now, the seed application they had was written in Python. I'd never touched a line of Python in my life. You know, that might be a shock, but not everyone writes Python. But I had ChatGPT, and it had been improved. I can read code, see if it doesn't suck. So I started telling it, this is how I want the test outcomes to be. It should do this. It should do this. And I got code that did that. And I had a really simple, I managed to create a RAG in a day that was not just parroting out what minimum CD said, it was interpreting what minimum CD said. And I thought that was interesting. And so then I started running some more experiments and came to the conclusion, and I wrote a blog post about this called AI is Taking Our Jobs, that said, it seems to me that if you use the skills you need for continuous delivery, if you're using behavior-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, that you should be able to write code off the tests. I even reached out to Dave Farley and I said, Dave, I can see a point in the future where it might be possible where my acceptance test or my IP and the code is like binary. I don't care about it. We're not there yet, but maybe. But what changed? Those models were steadily improving. And so I was getting less garbage out of them, but I was also learning how to use them better. So where am I today? If you know how to do CD, and I'm not talking about we commit code and it flows to production. I mean, we know how to write code that's tested before it goes into version control. We know how to work in small batches. We focus on solving problems instead of implementation. We're always looking for how we can improve things. And we're responsible for what we do. Now, this last one here, I was in open space yesterday. Everybody's concerned. People are going to generate code and walk away. If AI generates code, that's still my code. I'm still responsible. As a professional, I deliver good code, all right? Everyone's responsible. People who know how to work this way are going to win. People who don't are going to struggle. Everyone who knows how to work this way, find someone who doesn't, help them. And a few months ago, I said, okay, I'm going to try going all in, because I've been using the tools, been using Claude Code for my daily work in my company, but it was a combination of prompting and going in and fixing what I didn't like manually. But I said, I'm going to try an experiment. I think I'm going to try doing what I said we should be able to do with small batches of work using behavior-driven development. Now, there's a few slides here with QR codes. This is going to link to my GitHub repository. Some of these are specific versions of files in GitHub, but there's another one at the end that's the entire repo. This here is a link to the file for the initial prompt I gave Claude Code, because I knew I needed a feature file. If you know anything about BDD, you've got a feature file with scenarios in it that are the acceptance tests you need to pass. So I needed a feature file, and I'd worked with Claude Code enough to know that I needed a Claude file to create, this is our working agreement, this is how we will do our work. I'm way too lazy to write a whole feature file for the problem of trying to scrape stuff off of Medium. And especially since I don't exactly know how to do all of the things we need to do that, because I've never done it myself. So I was going to have to Google it. So I told Claude what I wanted to do, and it generated a feature file. And generated a working agreement. So we'll do the working agreement first. This is just a snippet. The longer one you'll see. The draft is really long and has too much stuff in it. The final version is much more concise. But it really focuses on where, this is the architecture constraints you have. This is how you're going to work. You do acceptance test-driven development. After every small change, you're going to run all the tests. You're going to run code quality scans. We're going to work a scenario at a time. We're not going to just go wild. And then I had the acceptance test, and it generated a whole bunch of scenarios, including resiliency features that for my particular use case I didn't need because it was just a tool for me. But if you wanted to operationalize it, it had like retry logic and restart from the middle of the work, and blanking on the term, throttling requests so you don't get shoved out of medium. And I went through the feature file, made some edits and some stuff that I'm like, well, no, let's not do this, or I don't want this feature, or whatever. And I said, okay, implement feature 1, or scenario 1. And then we just started working our way through. And we're doing acceptance test-driven development. Who here is familiar with acceptance test-driven development? Okay. Everyone's familiar with TDD, at least in theory, yes? So with TDD, you write a failing test, you write a small piece of code, make it pass, refactor the code. With acceptance test-driven development, you write a failing scenario, which is a bunch of tests that are going to run in sequence for a range act assert for a small behavior that's larger than a small unit of code. So if you're familiar with Martin Fowler's blogging on testing, it's what he would call a sociable unit test. So it's multiple units working together to perform a larger behavior. And that's what we're doing with acceptance test-driven development. So we have an acceptance test. Claude took that scenario from the feature file, converted it to just tests that were all failing, and then wrote the code to make those tests pass. Then we together refactored the code. I would say, I don't like this. I didn't touch the code, promise. I don't like this, this is too big, refactor the code. And it would go and do that, make sure the tests were passing, and then we commit the change. And we just did that again and again and again. And we hit some unknowns. There's all sorts of things I've never had to do as a professional developer. I spent my entire career doing enterprise development internally. Never had to scrape a web page. We had APIs. It's strange. Never had to do Google OAuth because all the internal, everything was internal stuff with whatever we were authorizing people with. So I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, but Claude does. Somebody out there does. And I know what the behaviors I want, and so we just worked through the problems. And we ran into issues like there was multiple different URLs that Medium was using for my blog posts, depending on how that particular post was published. And Claude would go out there and say, hey, I found your blog post. I said, well, you found 3. There's actually 78. Here's an example of one you didn't find. Claude would write a test for that, write the code for that, and then find more. I said, hey, I found 10 blog posts. I said, why did you find 10? There's like 78. Oh, it looks like the web page has infinite scroll. Claude telling me. Okay, well, fix that. I don't know how, fix it. And so it went through and wrote tests for infinite scroll, wrote the code for that, said, hey, here's 78 blog posts. It's like, cool. Now your front matter's messed up. And so it's just working through the process. And 4 hours later, I had the tool I needed to go and pull all of my blog posts down in Markdown with front matter so I could transport them into a static site builder, or in the case I was actually trying to do, feed it into ChatGPT and tell it to write a book. I'm way too scattered. People ask me to write a book all the time, and I'm just way too scattered for that. But I thought, maybe if I just fed it all the information I have and said, let's put a narrative together off of this, maybe it would work. Yeah, that failed. Probably my fault. Somewhat Hit's fault. Still working on that. But that was the experiment I was actually trying to run. And 4 hours, I thought that was a pretty good use of my time. And I say it saved me around 2 days. Well, oh yeah. I love the doubters on LinkedIn who go out there and tell somebody with 30 years of software experience that I have no idea how much time I saved, but it's possible that after something was done, I could go back and look at it and see how much time it would have taken me to try to figure that out, and say, yeah, I probably saved at least 2 days worth of work. So the takeaway I have from that is that, this will work, and it's getting better all the time, and we all need to help each other do this. Now, there's all sorts of other complaints people have. AI isn't deterministic. I don't care. Neither are humans. I won't write the same solution twice for the same test. I mean, somebody else might be robotic and be able to, but I can't. And I guarantee you, if I gave the same behavior test to 2 different developers, I get 2 different implementations to solve that test. Do I care? Well, I care that it's easy to change later, and I care it works, and I care it meets all the other performance tests, but I don't care what the implementation is as long as those are true. So we drive humans with tests, we drive agents with tests. But let's come back to these issues, because this is a problem. We have lost code. I mean, because Git is really cutting edge stuff that no one's ever heard about, or SVN or PVCS, for God's sakes. Check in your code. We have deleted databases. If you ever want to have fun, buy me a bourbon and Diet Coke. We'll sit down and I'll tell you about all the things that I've done in production that just either I missed exploding stuff by this much or just completely blew stuff out of the water. Nobody should ever touch production except through a pipeline. Why would you give a robot permission? That's just dumb. Large, unexpected change. One of the parts of the principles of continuous delivery is work in small batches. When I'm working with Claude, I don't say, hey, here, go look at a whole bunch of stuff and refactor these things. I say, hey, we're looking at this file over here for this module. This is the behavior we're trying to change. Change it, We're controlling the scope of our work exactly the same way we would do if we were working on a team trying to decompose a feature into tasks so that we can get things done in small pieces without things taking, 4 or 5 days. By the way, I don't believe any tasks should take more than 2 days, and story points are pointless because everything should be a 1, and if you're not doing that, everything's too big. Hallucinations. Same thing. If we're working in small controlled things, there might be some mistakes, but I'm going to make mistakes. But it's going to make mistakes and correct them faster than I would if there was some other developer doing it. So I'm willing to deal with that. And those are getting better. It's happening to me less. Reduce productivity. Okay, I've read those studies. They're heavily flawed. They don't control for experience with the platform. I talk about platform all the time. I gave a talk at Platform Con called Why Platforms Don't Matter. And the reason why is because if you give a platform to somebody without the training to be able to use its capabilities, at best, things won't improve. If you go back and look in the 70s with the rollout of ETL systems, most people had challenged rollouts, and some people went out of business trying to install these systems, while Black & Decker trained everybody on it, leveraged the capabilities, and just blew away everybody else. These are competence issues. These are not AI issues. These things will happen without AI. By the way, just before this talk, my deck got corrupted, blown away. Fortunately, I had a version of it that was about 10 hours old. AI had nothing to do with that. That was PowerPoint. Computers will screw stuff up without AI, and so will I. One of the things that screwed up was the prettier version of this chart that I didn't have time to remake. But if you go to this QR code, this is a really good blog article about different ways of working with agents to get things done, or just tools in general. So I know it's really hard to see, but on the left-hand side, you have engineering rigor, right? How much engineering rigor are we putting in the process? And on the bottom, we have AI autonomy, where on the right-hand side, it's high. So you have high AI autonomy on the right, and on the top, you have high rigor, okay? So autocomplete, basic, like, you type in a method signature and it auto-populates the method signature, right? That's kind of medium rigor, low autonomy. Lower right-hand corner, you have what we've decided is vibe coding. Now, the problem with vibe coding is some people mean it to mean something better than that. I don't. I mean it's high AI autonomy and low rigor. And we'll talk about the impact of that later. Upper right-hand corner, you're a product owner with a lot of engineering rigor orchestrating agents. I'm not there yet. What I'm normally doing is either AI-assisted development in the center, when I'm refactoring work or just doing something simple, and I don't need all of that rigor to do something like a new feature. But if it's a new feature, it's AI-augmented development, where I'm doing what I was talking about before. I think it's important that everyone understands how important engineering rigor is. With something I talk about a lot about continuous delivery is if you focus on quality and engineering rigor as CD, you get speed. If you focus on speed, you get garbage and war rooms. AI is exactly like that, only much, much faster. Because AI amplifies your skill. Back in the 80s, I saw a Bill Cosby skit. It's not work appropriate. I'm gonna do it anyway. He said back in the 80s, cocaine was a party drug. It wasn't like looked down upon really. He asked somebody, well, so what's so great about cocaine? And the guy said, well, it amplifies your personality. He says, yeah, but what if I'm an asshole? Right, it's the same thing. It's like, AI amplifies your skill, but what if I suck? Yeah, it'll amplify that too. 100%. And I see people on LinkedIn who are senior engineers and principal engineers saying how much garbage it is. But I'm not the only one getting these results. There's a lot of us out there comparing notes and trying different things. And we're not AI bros, we're people doing work. We know what we're doing. And so those guys who are saying it's just garbage, guys are telling on themselves. So developer takeaways I have from this, all right? AI speeds up everything, good or bad. By the way, not just development, you can use it for product discovery, operations, anything where you need something that'll do it faster and you actually know what you're doing. Knowing what you're doing is important. It'll do it well. And it's not gonna take your job. Developers who understand how to use XP and continuous delivery to drive AI are gonna take your job. AI isn't closing the gap between average and excellent developers. It's widening it. I'm very concerned about junior developers, how we grow. So there's some near future job opportunities. XP practitioners using AI to recover vibe-coded systems. Talked to a new friend Tuesday when my job hunt started. He's doing this. He didn't intend to do this. He understands modern software engineering practices, and he finds that all the people asking for help are startups who vibe-coded stuff, and it's garbage. And then the other one is coaching teams on XP and continuous delivery so they can actually use AI effectively. I predict these are coming. So we can rapidly deliver code change with AI, but it's probably not going to matter in your organization. Because anybody in here do any value stream mapping? Is the constraint coding? Hardly ever. We have vague requirements. You can't deliver tested code with vague requirements. You're spending too much time asking for clarification. Is this the rock you wanted? Functional silos, well, it's got to go to the testing team, and we've got to go to the release team. You've got manual validations. We've got to go to CAB. Bureaucratic approvals. You've got fragile release processes that are non-repeatable because we haven't automated. I know everyone else nobody's suffering from this here. I know that, right? But other people have these problems. And so this bulge in the middle is the coding. The thing that I know for a fact is every line of undelivered code change is inventory waste and represents delivery risk. And so the larger my delivered batch size, the more risk I have. If I speed up the developers and don't widen the rest of the pipe, that's terrifying. You have to improve the entire value stream. First, number one, don't just roll out AI to developers and say, here, figure out how to use it, right? That's terrible. That'll slow everything down. But we have to focus on where our breaks are. Clear goals, testable requirements, no functional silos. We need to make sure the development teams are loosely coupled, highly cohesive product teams, not feature teams kind of randomly touching garbage. Test-driven development, continuous integration. We need automated pipelines, fully automated pipelines with no manual approvals, right? We need continuous delivery and value stream improvement to leverage these tools. So here's your path forward. Map your value stream. You'll find out. Fix the real constraints. Man, I've got so many example value streams I've captured over the years. They're just, every time I look at them, I get triggered. Fix it. Relentlessly improve. Widen up your pipeline. Make development the constraint. While you're doing that, train developers on how to work correctly with modern software engineering practices. I recommend everybody read Modern Software Engineering by Dave Farley. It's a very, very good book. Train developers on this. And then take all of that success and amplify it with AI. Still learning? I was reaching out to a friend of mine who published a thing on LinkedIn about some new stuff he learned. I said, hey, dude, when you get back from DevOps Days London, we've got to get on a Zoom call. You got to share this with me because I got to try it. So all of us are learning this stuff, but it's moving really fast. Don't get left behind. If minimumcd.org, again, is a community attempt to help people with continuous delivery. I write quite a bit about all things delivering software better, team culture, and a little bit about AI now on my blog. There's my LinkedIn. Feel free to DM me. I love talking to people about their challenges and brainstorming solutions. I learned so much from doing that, so don't feel like you're impinging on my time, especially since I have a little bit more free time now since Monday. and again, scaled agile DevOps maturity framework, so you too can be a SAT MF. And currently interviewing employers, so hit me up if you want to have a conversation. And I don't know how much time we have left. How much time do I have? I don't have a clock. Until someone kicks me off the stage, any questions? All right, I'm good. All right, thank you so much.